Today's video is sponsored by LastPass. We're living in a time right now where a lot of amazing retro classics are getting a second chance and being made easily accessible for lots of people to experience, whether it's people wanting to play old school favorites of theirs that they have nostalgia for, or for younger gamers to get a first time experience with. Now, some of these games are being made available digitally across a number of different platforms, but another really popular method right now is releasing games on singular consoles that usually have kind of a best of list. Now, a popular example of this is of course the Nintendo Classic Edition, but if you want to go even further back, there's a collection even for the Atari 2600. For $50, you get a cool little system that looks like the old school one that comes with wireless sticks that lets you play 120 different Atari classics. Now that may sound like a good deal, but there's one way to go just a little more fancy, a little more extravagant, and play a whopping 4 games for $50,000. The Tesla. Thanks to a recent update, Tesla owners can now access a really simple Atari emulator through the Easter egg drawer, which allows them to play 4 different Atari classics, specifically the arcade versions, which, in all honesty, 10 times out of 10 the arcade versions are better than the 2600 home ports. Now, if you want to play these, you do have to be parked in the car. You cannot play and drive at the same time for reasons I personally cannot comprehend, but once you're set up, you're able to play these games either using a touchscreen interface where there's actually like a little picture of an arcade cabinet you're playing on, or you can even go full screen on the tablet and control using the little knobs on the steering wheel. Before moving on, I want to take a second to thank LastPass for sponsoring today's video. LastPass is a super easy way to manage, access, and protect all of your passwords, something that personally I have always really needed help with. I cannot tell you how many times I have forgotten passwords for things that I've used for different sites because I used different ones in different places, I've had to reset them, I've lost notes, and LastPass completely removes all that worry. Especially in today's world with how many different accounts everyone needs to juggle, it's really important that you don't use a single password across multiple accounts, because as soon as one of those is compromised, they're all compromised. And that's a really easy mistake to make for people that don't want to have to memorize 100 different passwords at all the same time. LastPass removes that burden and makes it really easy to manage so you can make sure you have a unique password for every single one of your accounts, and with multi-factor authentication, you can rest easy that all that information is going to be safe and sound. It even makes using passwords on mobile a lot easier by autofilling your information on mobile websites or on any apps that you're using. Make sure to check out the link down below to learn more about LastPass. So, what are these games and what is it like to actually play them on a Tesla? Well, let's break it down game by game based on when they were originally released, starting all the way back in 1979 with Lunar Lander. Lunar Lander is significant in that it is the first game Atari made that used vector graphics. It wasn't the first game to use that graphics technology, but it was Atari's first foray into it. It's based on this entire genre that's actually named the same thing, Lunar Landers, based on the entire idea of landing a lunar module safely on the moon. And this was actually one of the first ones to use a graphic interface versus being a text-based adventure or any other kind of simple form of gameplay. It was also an excellent way to get people to spend a lot of quarters on a single game, because instead of using quarters just as a way to start a new playthrough or gain an extra life, you were actually able to spend quarters directly in a single playthrough to add more fuel to your lunar module, hopefully giving you a better chance of safely securing a landing, aka great way to make a lot of money. Also one of the first games to actually make use of multiple perspectives, in which you have a large landscape shot of the moon when you're first trying to land your lunar module, and once you get close to the ground, it zooms in significantly. Next up, also from 1979, is Asteroids, Atari's much more successful vector graphics-based game, and honestly, one of the most significant games in gaming history. Asteroids took a familiar formula of flying a ship to shoot down different objects, but changed it. Instead of being something like Space Invaders where you're just shooting at things descending on you, you actually have free roam of the map and can wrap around it while using physics-based controls that are honestly a nightmare to play nowadays. This game benefited big time from the decision to go with vector-based graphics instead of pixel ones, because it gave players a lot more minute control and fine aim versus the limitations they would have with something that used pixels, especially for back then during its time. And this is very easily provable by just playing the arcade version and then comparing it to the Atari port, which is a lot more rough. Yeah, this definitely doesn't have the same kind of satisfaction that the vector one gives you, because you have such more control over like where you can shoot exactly. Whereas this one, you just kind of see every frame you turn. This almost doesn't even feel like the same game with the way the asteroids move around. They're all a lot faster, and they're just kind of going in a much more predictable straight pattern. I mean, I guess they were in the other one too, but there was more sense of momentum with everything. It'd be really great if we got another Atari Classic system like this, but one that actually focused on the arcade versions of ones, because there's really no reason that you couldn't emulate those at this point. I mean, Sure, vector graphics were awesome for their time, but you can basically simulate that same experience with how many more pixels you can support on an image. Then we get to Missile Command from the 1980s, a game that, honestly, I have always been terrible at no matter how many times I've tried to play it across my entire life. Now, if you're not familiar with this game, the entire object is you have these 3 missile batteries which can shoot down various missiles that are slowly falling from the sky. You have limited ammunition, and you're doing your best to protect these 6 different cities as well as your missile batteries from getting blown up. And fun note, something that I didn't really realize until replaying it most recently now, it is a very dark game when you think about it, considering the fact that there's not really a way to ever win, you just get as far as you can, and even when you lose, the game doesn't use the traditional interface of just saying, hey, game over, you lost, it says, the end. As in, this was inevitable, everything gets destroyed. Perfectly fitting that theme, this was, by far, the most annoying game to play on the Tesla. So with the touchscreen interfaces, if you're using the full screen, it had you actually hitting the bases you want to have fire at the same time as trying to aim using another finger on the touchpad, which got really confusing sometimes, figuring out which one I wanted to fire when and just quickly moving around the entire screen. Using the arcade cabinet controls, still not great. Honestly, if you have a Tesla and you're able to play these games, just steer clear of that one. That's a good call. And then we come to my personal favorite game on this list, one of my all-time favorites that I used to play in arcades way back when, Centipede. Centipede is very reminiscent of some other classic shooter games from arcades like Space Invaders, but it's much more hectic, where you're constantly trying to shoot down these bugs. When you kill them, they create more mushrooms which create blockage, they change paths, there's all kinds of other insects you have to be wary of as you get further in the game. It's really hectic in later levels and so much fun. That being said, once again, not the smoothest experience on the Tesla. Still better than Missile Command, but a little rough going. The full screen command controls actually worked pretty well. It's just trying to get the rapid fire to go as well as you can. The touchscreen controls, where you're actually using the Atari cabinet design, it was actually, I could play it. I placed pretty far, better than I did in some of the other games, but still a little rough. Historically significant fact for this game, Centipede was actually one of the few games from Atari that was co-developed by one of the few women that worked in the games industry at the time, Donna Bailey. So is a Tesla the most cost-effective way to experience some awesome arcade classics? Not really, but it's really cool to see the impact that these games had, that to this day, when they're almost 40 years old, they're still showing up this way. It really makes you think, how many games today are going to have that kind of lasting influence, where 40, 50, 100 years from now, they're still going to be referenced in this kind of way? Are we going to have awesome far future space cars that let you play Bubsy the Woolly Strike Back? I hope so.